Welcome to the Where Do Gays Retire podcast, where we help you in the LGBTQ plus community find a safe and affordable retirement place. Join Mark Goldstein as he interviews others who live in gay-friendly places around the globe. Learn about the climate, cost of living, healthcare, crime and safety, and more. Now, here's your host, Mark Goldstein.
I'm going to ask you to guess the city today that we're going to do. So can you guess this tune in 9 words? Tramps like us, baby, we were born to run. Did anyone guess? Well, we're going to talk today about Asbury Park, New Jersey. Our guest is Brent Winborn, and we'll tell you a little bit about Brent. Brent grew up in the college town of Fayetteville, Arkansas, the son of a teacher, school administrator, and a successful real estate broker. On a family trip to New York City when Brent was in grade school, he saw Ethel Merman in Hello, Dolly. Good show. This sparked the love of theater and eventually a move to Manhattan to pursue a career in musical theater. Brent performed off-Broadway in regional theaters across the U.S. and on cruise ships around the world for 10 years. In the late 1990s, Brent left the theater and began working in nonprofit administration, spending almost 20 years as the business manager for a Nobel laureate in a research laboratory at Rockefeller University. A friend from the theater days introduced Brent to Asbury Park, New Jersey in the early 2000s when the city was changing from a gritty ghost town to a Jersey Shore Mecca. I was there when it was gritty. And turning for gays wanting to nab an affordable house near the beach. After many vacation trips to Asbury, Brent and his husband bought their first shore home in 2011. Brent took early retirement at the end of the pandemic and started a new career in real estate, following in his mother's footsteps. He enjoys making many new friends, as his mother did, helping to find the perfect shore home for his clients. Brent enjoys small town life, now in his 3rd Asbury home with his husband, Joe, also a former actor turned nonprofit professional, and their mini Aussie Doodle Dickens. What a Dickens he is. And welcome, Brent. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming. Brent, your journey to Asbury Park sounds intriguing. Can you walk us through the decision-making process that led you to choose Asbury Park as your new home?
So as you were saying, a friend of mine who knew a couple who bought a home in Asbury in the early 2000s, they were, I think, 2 of the first gay men to purchase a home in Asbury. I told my friend George about Asbury, and he suggested that we take a day trip. And we did, and I was impressed by the beach and how clean it was. I had memories of seeing the Atlantic Ocean in Atlantic City when I was a kid on that same trip to New York, and I didn't have a real good memory of the Atlantic, and I was impressed with how blue and it was very, very nice. Also, the Asbury Beach at the time had the convention hall, which is still there, and the old casino. Both were built around 1929, and they were sort of framing the beach at the time. The casino has since been, most of it's been torn down. But it reminded me, for good or bad, of the scene at the end of Planet of the Apes when, or maybe it's at the beginning, when the Statue of Liberty is coming up out of the sand. It was a little like that. And to have these big historic monuments framing the beach, I thought was cool. It made it a little quirky and fun. So I started taking day trips and 3-day weekend vacations, mini vacations to Asbury as an alternative because it was closer than Key West, which was my favorite vacation spot at the time. And Asbury is a little like the Key West, I think, of the Northeast. It has a similar vibe to it, definitely. And over time, I really grew to love the city more and more. And shortly after I met my husband, when we were dating, we took a trip to Asbury in the fall, right before Thanksgiving, and he really fell in love with the place too. We bought our first place in 2011, and it was a condo on the north side of Asbury near the beach. And then we decided we wanted a little bit bigger place, and we bought a house. And then during the pandemic, when we were both working remotely for two different nonprofits and both in the house, we needed a little more space because we could both be heard on each other's calls. And my work colleagues would say, "Is that the television? Can you turn it down?" And I said, "That's my husband, and he has one volume." We were both actors. We both tend to be loud. So we bought a little bit larger house around the corner, and we've been there now, I guess, around 2020. And we like it. After we moved into this house, we decided we would get a puppy, and we have Dickens, our mini Aussie Doodle, who keeps us both running. He's a bundle of energy and intelligence. He's a little too smarter than we are many times.
Yeah, that's my Sheltie. Same thing. So that's great. 3 homes, and you're pretty much settled in. So tell us about Asbury's location in New Jersey and how it offers unique perspectives. Can you provide us with a geographical overview and highlight what sets it apart from other cities around you?
Asbury is in what's considered central New Jersey. It's towards the north end of the Jersey Shore. It's a little over an hour drive from New York City and maybe just under 2-hour train ride in New Jersey Transit from Manhattan. A lot of people, I think, when they hear the Jersey Shore, think of the reality show, and that atmosphere does exist somewhat in the summers a little farther south than here. But the population of Asbury and visitors too is skewed a little older than farther down the shore. So it's a little calmer here, even though we do have concerts during the year and we have live music venues. But even some of those concerts, I think, are attended more by a more baby boomer crowd, I would say. I think also that Asbury is definitely more diverse and I would say a little more liberal than a lot of areas of New Jersey. New Jersey tends to be a pretty solidly blue state, but the southern part of New Jersey, I kind of believe, is a little redder than the northern part, much like our country can be.
Right.
But Asbury is, I mean, there are people that you can get into discussions with who are more to the red side than the blue in Asbury, but for the most part, we're a pretty diverse, liberal group of people here, I would say. And I think that that's different than many other areas around New Jersey and many areas around the country in general, I would think. I am there. The other thing, I guess, geographically, I said proximity to New York, which is great because you can hop on a train and be in New York in just under 2 hours. It's also close to Philadelphia. It's about an hour and a half or a little under to drive to Philadelphia. You can also take a New Jersey Transit and transfer to Amtrak and get to Philly pretty fast, or Baltimore and DC and other places that Amtrak goes. So it's not a bad location to be in, if you like traveling around, but it's also a pretty nice place if you just want to stay right here.
Yeah, and I've known people when I worked in Manhattan all those years. I've known people that commuted every day from the Jersey Shore.
Yes, my husband now goes in. He walks to the train station. We're about equidistant between the Asbury station and the Allenhurst station, and he goes to the Allenhurst station early on a Monday morning and catches the train into Manhattan. He's now working doing human resources for the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So he catches a train around 7:20, and he can get into Manhattan just before 9 o'clock. And then he comes back on Wednesday evenings. So he works in Manhattan on Mondays and Tuesdays, and we still have a place on the Upper East Side where he stays on Monday and Tuesday nights, and then he works there Wednesdays and comes back Wednesday evenings. So that's not too bad a commute. It's a little long to commute every day, but there are people who do it. And there are people who commute. I used to work with someone when I was working in Manhattan years ago who commuted from Pennsylvania every
Oh
day.
yeah, I did too. From the Pocono, somebody from the Poconos used to commute every day. I was like, John, how do you do it?
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing that because they were in the office more than they were at home, really.
Yeah, yeah, serious. And I lived in Connecticut, and that was a pretty big commute too. So
Yeah, go ahead.
I used to go from Connecticut to Brooklyn, which was a big commute, and
That's a,
then I got a transfer into Midtown, so I was going from Connecticut to Midtown, which wasn't bad because I get off in Grand Central. So
I did some commuting to Connecticut. I had a church singing gig in Westchester, and the choir director there was actually partnered with a man who had a job as a choir director in Stamford, Connecticut. So I would go up
that's where
there
I
and
lived.
do holiday concerts where they would combine our choirs, and so I did some of that. So it's not a bad commute, but doing it every day is not fun.
Yeah, it wears on you. Okay. So tell us about the climate. Can you give us some insights into Asbury's climate? I suspect it's maybe a little bit warmer than New York City, maybe,
We're enough
because it's so
south of New
close.
York that it does tend to be a little warmer here than in New York. We have a fairly temperate climate. There are definitely four seasons, but lately the winters have been getting milder. This winter, I think we had one snow that you needed to shovel, and other than that, just a little dusting. And we only had a few times when the temperature dipped really low. New Jersey's known as the garden state, and for those who are gardeners and planters, we're on the same planting zone actually as my hometown, Fayetteville, Arkansas, because it's in the Ozarks, so it's a little cooler than the rest of Arkansas. And Asbury and even Manhattan are milder than upstate New York or farther north in New Jersey because of being on the coast. So
Yeah.
we do have that benefit, and it's really, I mean, because we're the garden state, we love talking about our gardens, and we all like trade tips and everything. But this year we had plants that were generally annuals that came back. I was kind of surprised. I decided to try and experiment and leave some things in the ground and see how they did. And we had things like verbena that usually die and you have to replant them that came back, surprisingly enough. So it's getting milder. We also in the fall seems to be getting longer, and we even have times in December when we can sit outside in the cafes on downtown Asbury, which was nice. That was actually really nice during the pandemic, because that year it was very mild, and the week of Christmas we were eating in the outdoor cafes because we really couldn't eat inside.
Right.
That wasn't allowed, so it was a benefit. But I would say that most of our falls have been getting longer, and the winters are somewhat shorter, which is good. It's nice.
Yeah, I remember those days. I mean, growing up, it was freezing cold in New York. Like I came from Brooklyn, and I'd wait for a bus, and I was the biting cold. And I don't think you experience that anymore.
Not as much. I can remember traveling to New York with the theater group when I was in undergraduate school, and we would go the week of Thanksgiving, and it almost always snowed that week. That would usually be our first snow in Manhattan was Thanksgiving. Then it would warm up a bit, and we would get our next one around New Year's. But things are much milder there, and definitely here. I mean, I thought we weren't going to even have snow this year. I think we ended up having a couple of snows in February. So I think through global warming or whatever, it's changing. But it's not, the winters aren't awful for people who don't really like that. I think we get enough snow that it lifts your spirits, and it's not a dreary winter, I don't think. And I like walking along the boardwalk. I think fall, spring, and even in the winter are some of the best times to be here. There aren't quite as many people on the boardwalk, although the city itself stays busy year round. There aren't quite as many people on the beach, and that's nice. You can also, Asbury's a very dog-friendly town, so you can take your dog on the boardwalk between like September and May, and that's always fun to do.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah, and at least dogs don't burn their paws on hot ground like
Right.
they do here. Okay, so how about, do you get often hurricanes and flooding?
We we're a little protected here because of the way the shore exists. We during Sandy, it was a perfect storm, and it hit just at high tide on a full moon. So there were waves that went over some of the buildings on the boardwalk. We call it McClune's because it was McClune's, but it's now called the Robinson Ale House. It used to be a Howard Johnson's, and the waves, my understanding, went over the building. There
Wow.
were fish that were big that in the
Wow.
park in front of Convention Hall, which is on the other side from of the boardwalk from the ocean. It was kind of crazy, but for the most part, I mean, we when we had our condo right after we moved in, there was a hurricane, and we didn't have any results of that at all. During Sandy, that building did have minimal flooding. There are three lakes in Asbury. Wesley Lake is on the south end between Asbury and Ocean Grove, the next down south. And then Sunset Lake is in the middle, and then Deal Lake is on the north side, and that's where our condo was. And those lakes can be drained before a storm, and they didn't quite do that soon enough before Sandy. So we got a little water in the lobby of our building, maybe a couple of inches. Wasn't bad. And Asbury actually bounced back faster than some of the other places. Atlantic City had it pretty rough, and some other places farther down the shore lost a lot of their boardwalk. A lot of people started coming to Asbury after Sandy because we bounced back faster, and I think our revitalization and people moving here has definitely picked up because people discovered Asbury because they could come here and they couldn't go places farther south.
Right. Very good. Very good. Okay. The weather, it's it's not bad. It has four seasons. It's not freezing cold and it's not boiling hot. So in the summer.
Except there are times when it gets hot in the summer, but we tend, because we're on the coast, we tend to usually have a breeze, and it doesn't get quite as humid as like where I grew up in Arkansas. And so I think it's a nice climate if you enjoy four seasons and you don't want to be in a place where it's sort of one climate all year round.
Right. Right. So living in an LGBTQ community can profoundly impact one's experience. How has residing in Asbury Park's LGBTQ community influenced your life there? And also, I was very pleasantly surprised to even discover that there was an LGBTQ community in Asbury. I didn't really know that there was, and there is quite a substantial one.
Asbury has had a very lively, strong LGBTQ plus community for, well, I would say since the 70s. There used to be many, many gay bars in Asbury. We were very fortunate to have a close friend whose name was Carol Torrey, and we lost Carol earlier this year. And she was a trailblazer in the gay community here in Asbury. In the 70s, she bought the historic Albion Hotel, which had been built with pieces from, I think, the French Pavilion or one of the pavilions from the 1939 World's Fair. During the war, they barged the steel from one of the pavilions here and built the Albion. And strangely enough, a woman that we knew in Manhattan's aunt used to own that hotel, and I think was the person who sold it to Carol. But Carol bought it and turned it into an LGBTQ focused hotel. It was primarily for women, but it had 3 or 4 bars. That there was a women's bar, and then there was a mixed bar. And she ran that hotel for many years until, unfortunately, the city took it by eminent domain.
Hmm.
And after that, she ran a few other bars. She ran one in the Charms building, which was associated with the Charms, like Suckers Lollipops.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
So there was a gay bar in that building that Carol owned, and then a couple of other places. So Carol was our realtor when we first started looking for homes in Asbury, and then became a very close friend of ours. And at her memorial recently, Luann Peterpaul, who is the first, my understanding is, first out lesbian New Jersey assembly person, gave a proclamation commemorating Carol's trailblazing efforts with the LGBTQ plus community in Asbury. And we were fortunate to know Carol and that she introduced us to many of the people in the community. And the community here is, because we are a small town, is very close, and we watch out for each other. It's an amazing group of people to know, and we're a family in every sense of the word, really. I mean,
That's great.
I think everyone goes through phases where they can be bickering and everything, as families do, and then make up and kiss, and then everything's fine. But that we do take care of each other, and there have been many times I've seen where someone would lose a partner and might have trouble with expenses, and the community comes together and has a fundraiser for those people. And it's a really wonderful environment, and with a really strong history, and it's a great community to be a part of.
That sounds great. I'm all about making community, and that's so important wherever you're moving. That's almost to my top. I mean, besides affordability and healthcare, community is up there with everything else, because if you're not in the right community, you're going to feel a little bit out of place. And that's how my Where Do Gays Retire started and was born. So when I moved to Florida.
Asbury has a very strong community in general, and because it's a small town, about a square mile an area, you see everyone all the time. When I walk to the office in the mornings, I pass the same people who will be out on their porches, and we nod and smile to each other and comment on the weather, and we get to know each other. And the straight people and the gay people get along very well, and we all go to the same places and hang out. And it was the reason I was going to talk about this and didn't. One of the trips I took here was a 4th of July weekend when I was still single, and I met a bunch of guys in the bed and breakfast where I was staying, and we all went to the boardwalk to watch the fireworks, and we were all standing shoulder to shoulder with people of many different ethnicities and cultural backgrounds, and we were all smiling and in awe of the fireworks, and we were all getting along as I have rarely seen anywhere. And that aspect, and many others, I think Asbury is a little utopic, and that's another reason why I wanted to be here, and that still continues.
That's great. It's as I said, it's so important to live in a good community and make community and have friends. Okay, so is there like a gayborhood, so to speak, with gay bars?
There, because the town isn't that large, there used to be many gay bars, sort of starting kind of at the beach and then coming up Cookman Avenue is the main drag through town that runs from the train station down to the boardwalk. And there used to be several along that route I was saying, my friend Carol had several along there. Now there are primarily two. There's Paradise, which is a bar and dance club in the Empress Hotel. In the early 2000s, when Asbury was coming back from the slump it was in for many, many years, Shep Pettibone, who was a music producer who worked with Madonna and other singers and acts, bought the Empress Hotel, which was a 1950s style motel. It's actually in the background of Bruce Springsteen's image for the Hungry Heart single. You see it, the Empress Hotel sign behind him. Shep bought the Empress and started renovating it, and that was really one of the big boosts to the revitalization of Asbury. It was that hotel. It became sort of a gay mecca. People would come, straight and gay people would come from Philly, because it was kind of the only dance club between Philly and New York, and still kind of is. There is one other dance club that I think tends to be a little more straight, but Paradise is still really like dance club on the weekends especially. And So that's one of the gay bars. They tend to be open a little later at night. And then the big mainstay, I think, of the gay community, it's the pretty much the Cheers of Asbury Park, is Georgie's, which was established in 1999, and it's called Georgie's because there were two Georges who owned it, not Georgie's with an apostrophe s. And Georgie's is great. It has a very lively happy hour crowd. The same people, you'll see the same people every day. Everyone knows everybody. It has a pool table and a dartboard, and there are a lot of straight people who hang out there because of that. I have a straight buddy at work, and Georgie's is his favorite bar. He started hanging out there with the friends from his neighborhood. They almost have a weekly block party at Georgie's. It also has a kitchen, and they serve really good pub food several nights a week. They have drag shows and karaoke and seasonal events, and have beer blasts with the leather community. So it's kind of the anchor for the gay community here. But so there are those two main gay hangouts. There are other bars in town that are gay owned, and I would say most of the restaurants and bars in Asbury are gay friendly, and everybody goes to all of them. And again, the community really does get along. It's rare when you see anybody who doesn't get along, and they kind of stick out, because that kind of just doesn't happen here.
Do you think the LGBTQ community was instrumental in its revival of Asbury? The gays come in and gentrify.
I think so. In fact, I have a new rental listing, and my client said that she figured out early on, because she purchased property in Manhattan, and she said that she followed the gays because wherever they were going was the place that you knew that you wanted to be, where you could probably find a really nice place for a bargain. And that definitely, I think, happened here. And I think Pettibone buying the Empress and turning that into this club was a huge boost. And yeah, I think Asbury was very much like the West Village was, the East Village, Chelsea. And I think the revitalization has been good. I think to a certain degree, more straight people are coming here now. I've been doing a lot of rentals lately, and there's, I guess, still a healthy mix, but I think more younger straight professional couples are coming to Asbury, whereas maybe a few years ago there would have been more gay couples.
Well, that's what happens. The gays come in, revitalize, and then the straights come back.
We make it all nice for everybody.
Right. Exactly. That's why in my group, I'm going to ask a question. Anywhere in the United States, where would you have a gayborhood? Now, you have to take in consideration cost of living, good health care. Where would you put it? I'd love to see what people come up with.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I would like to know too.
Yeah, because there are places that you would sometimes love to know about and move to, but unfortunately things don't fall into place. Either cost of living is too high, healthcare may not be good. Where would the gays go? So to revitalize a place, that's the place I want to go to.
Yeah, it would be interesting to figure out where the next place would be.
Yeah. So stay tuned to Where the Gays Retire. Okay, so there are bars, like you mentioned, and the hotels. So that's key too for building community as well. And there's nightlife. How about meeting? Is it hard to meet others in the gay community there, or is it easy?
I think it's pretty easy, because it's a small town, you do see a lot of the same people, but I think people meet each other here the way they do anywhere else, in the bars and in the restaurants. But because it's a small town, you can meet people, running on the boardwalk or walking your dog around town. And I think that's what happens here. And I think there are some benefits to it being a small community and everybody says hello to each other when they pass and greets each other. There are downsides to that too, because then there is a smaller dating pool if that's what you're looking for, than there would be in Manhattan or
Right.
Philly or a larger area. But I think that that it's still pretty easy to meet people, and I think that definitely easy to make friends here in your neighborhood. We know most of our neighbors, and I have friends through my work colleagues who live just a couple of blocks away, and that's a little bit different neighborhood. During the pandemic, we lived on a street where all of the houses were built in like 1922, and it was a great place to spend the pandemic. Our porches were very close together, so we could be on our porches and talk to each other and be socially distant.
Oh, that's good.
And it was wonderful, but we knew like almost everybody, and we would sort of sit on our porches and talk to our neighbors, and we knew everybody along the block. And that happens here a lot. Asbury's a big porch community. Actually, that's one of my favorite festivals.
I like that.
Yeah, it's Porch Fest, where people volunteer their porch and their yard as makeshift stages, and all over town there are pop-up live concerts with all different types of bands from blues to Broadway, and it's a wonderful
cool.
event, and when that happens.
Oh, that sounds cool. Very cool. Okay. Let's talk about practicalities, cost of living. Can you describe median income versus home prices versus rentals versus sales?
So I would say that sometimes it seems that Asbury is not necessarily for the faint of wallet. It's the median home prices for Monmouth County, where Asbury is located, is from the mid 600,000s to probably the mid 700s. Asbury skews a little higher than that. The inventory is very low, which is similar to many other places where people were moving to during the pandemic. There was a big influx during the pandemic here.
Yeah.
A lot of people moved from New York, from Boston, from Philadelphia, and that happened, I think, in a lot of places where the style of living was somewhat slower paced, and people started reevaluating where they wanted to live. Housing prices are kind of high. Rents are trending up. I would say for, I think, one bedrooms here are hovering now around 2,000, going a little bit higher than that, where they were a little lower than that, maybe even a year or two ago. Asbury hasn't had a ton of rentals. When we were looking, we originally wanted to rent, and there was nothing to rent, so it was really easier to buy. Now we do see a few more newer buildings, especially in downtown Asbury, so there are a few more options, and a lot of people are renting out their homes as seasonal rentals. Those tend to be much more expensive in the summer, particularly, but the past few years, we've had a lot of winter rentals. There are more. Property taxes tend to be high in New Jersey. Our property tax rate for the next year in Asbury was around like 1.5 for $100 of assessed value. I think for the next year it's going to be 1.3, I think 81, something like that, which would mean that for a house assessed at 750,000, your taxes are going to be a little over 10,000, like about 10,350, something like that. And that's a higher, I would say. It's higher than some places in New Jersey, although New Jersey in general is high.
It's high.
The one benefit to Asbury, it's in an urban enterprise zone, so our sales tax is about half of what it is elsewhere in New Jersey. So here, like 3.13, I think. So
that is low.
That's really low. It's lower than my hometown in Arkansas has like a 10% sales tax. It's insane. So that's
I'm used
great
to like 8 or 10.
Yes, and New York is 8.25, I think, maybe a little more than that now. So that helps when you're eating out. If you eat out quite a lot, to have because prices for eating out here, depending on where you go, can be almost as much as Manhattan. But with the sales tax being lower, then your bill isn't quite as high because it adds up quickly in New York, especially with the sales tax as high as it is. So that is one benefit, and you do notice it. And there is still. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, do you know if New Jersey taxes Social Security and pensions?
That I don't know. And I'm not at that point yet, so I haven't found
You're
that
too young.
out. Yeah, I'm not. I have to wait a little while longer for Social Security, so I don't know that.
I could check that out and put that in
Oh,
the
you know
show
what?
notes.
I think they do. I think I've actually heard a few of my friends that actually at Georgie's talking about it, and I think they do. I think it's similar. I think that happens with my mom in Arkansas. I think it happens here too. And if you make more, if you're on Social Security and you make too much, then you have to either. I think you end up getting charged for like tax wise.
Yeah, but the way Social Security works is once you reach full retirement age and are able to collect full Social Security, then you could work wherever and you're not going to get penalized. But some states do tax Social Security. Like, for instance, Arizona does not tax Social Security. I know California doesn't tax Social Security, but they do pensions and IRAs. So that's something I'll check into.
Yeah, I'm not sure about. I know, yeah, I'm pretty sure that it's the same here with pensions, but it's just at a different. Well, you're in a different tax bracket for one thing once you start getting the pension. But I don't know about Social Security. I'm sorry, I don't know that.
That's okay. I will check it out and put it in the show notes. Okay, so how about utilities, groceries? Are they pretty much on par with the rest of the East Coast, or is it a little bit more expensive?
I think that electricity here doesn't seem to be as high as it might be. I think maybe even when we were in Manhattan, but gas prices for the heating tend to be kind of high. I think cable and internet is basically the same as it is elsewhere. It tends to be a little high here. You so asked about utilities and food prices. Depends on where you go. We have one grocery store in Asbury, and we go there quite a lot because it's within walking distance, and we like walking there and picking up everything rather than driving. There are some places we can drive to, like we have Whole Foods and a Trader Joe's within driving distance, and a Wegmans.
I was going to ask Trader Joe's.
Yeah,
Costco.
We have Costco, and so there are bargains at Costco from time to time. I've found when I go to Costco that sometimes I think I'm getting a bargain, and I'm not really.
You're spending more money than you
I'm getting stuff that I don't necessarily need.
Yeah.
We have a couple of grocery stores here that are ShopRite is one chain here that tends to be cheaper. So I think Wegmans, a lot of people go there, but I find it to be really high, especially for meat and poultry and those things. It's cheaper at our neighborhood place here in Asbury. I was going to say too that the newer buildings going up in Asbury are skewing kind of high for purchase prices. We do have condo buildings that have been around a little longer, and some of those prices are more affordable. There's actually a beautiful old apartment condo building that was built in the 1920s called the Santander. Myrna Loy lived in it. The actress Myrna Loy lived in the Santander years ago, and they have some really pretty units. Those tend to be a little less expensive, and there are some other condo buildings that are a little less expensive. There are also communities or neighborhoods just outside the Asbury border that still are a bike ride away from the beach that have prices a little less. So it's still, I think it can be possible to live here and balance your budget, but it's not as easy as I think some places maybe.
So let's say a condo, 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. What would you think the price?
So in the Santander, well, actually, so one that I showed recently downtown was just under 650, and in a newer building. It was a nice 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo, and then I've seen others in buildings that maybe aren't as new, like the Santander is an older building, but some of them have been redone, and those are more around a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and those units, not very many of them have two, would be like 450, I think, around that, which is a good price here.
Mm-hmm.
Then yeah, it varies depending on the age of the building, of course, how much renovation has taken place, and that sort
And
of
what
thing.
amenities they
What
offer too.
amenities they have. There, some of the older buildings don't. I mean, there are only a couple of buildings in Asbury that have pools. Actually, the place where the condo building we lived in did have a pool. There aren't many of those, a few. And actually, that building, it's interesting. It has never been as pricey as some of the others, and people think it's because they are not a dog-friendly building. Almost all of Asbury is dog-friendly, and that particular building is not. You can have cats, but excuse me, but you can't have
Have
dogs. We
dogs.
didn't have our dog when we were there, so
Got it. Okay. How about the cultural scene? I know there's a lot of culture going on in Asbury. Do you find cultural experiences adequate as opposed to, or do you feel like you need to go to New York City or Philadelphia to get your fix?
I think there are a lot of cultural outlets in Asbury. We have a lot of festivals. The Porch Fest that I was telling you about that happens. There is a big music festival in the in September called See Here Now. Springsteen's actually headlining for that this year, and tickets sold out almost as soon as they were
I'm sure.
available. It was crazy. We have a few others. There's this festival that highlights music and comedy and film and technology called North to Shore, that's shared between Asbury and Newark, New Jersey, which to the north of us, and Atlantic City. There are really good smaller theaters here and close by. There's a new company called the Asbury Theater Company that just started, and Sally Struthers was in a production there last fall. I actually ran into a buddy of mine in Asbury who was directing a show. My friend Alan and I had been in an off-Broadway show together years ago, and he was hanging out in Georgie's one night, and he was directing a show in Long Branch, which is about 20 minutes away. There are a few other theaters. Red Bank, which is about the same distance away, has the Count Basie Theater, and they do concerts and theater. So I think there are many different theater outlets. There are definitely live music venues, the Stone Pony, of course, and the Wonder Bar. Springsteen, until recently, he hasn't I think he's had health issues lately, but he used to drop into the Wonder Bar or the Stone Pony at least once or twice a summer for an impromptu concert.
Is that where he started? The Stone Pony sounds so familiar.
The Stone Pony has been around for a long time, and I think that that's probably where he started with his band. Was actually Clarence Clemens' son, Jared. I just saw an article, was performing here. I think he's performing as part. I think of the part of the North Shore Festival. I think he's going to be performing in next week. The Asbury portion of that starts this next week. So it runs the 10th through the 16th. And I saw an article. I think Jared Clemens is performing in that festival. There's historically there was a strong African American music scene on the west side of Asbury in the Springwood Avenue area, similar to the music scene in Harlem back in the early 20th century. And there were many clubs that Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, and Fats Waller performed in those clubs. Fats Waller actually wrote Honeysuckle Rose on the west side of Asbury. And the city is trying to revitalize the Springwood Avenue area, and they're doing free concerts all over town, but they're doing some in Springwood Avenue area to try and sort of revitalize the area and also kind of bring back that history that was sort of lost for a time. There are also galleries in town and uh, quite a few local artists. We have a big, I think, mural scene in Asbury. Some of the older pavilions on the boardwalk have been painted by local artists, and they're really cool. And there are other buildings around town that have been some of the older, like garden apartments. They're starting to put murals on to kind of make them look a little more modern, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But so I don't. I mean, people do. You can take the train into Manhattan and be there in under 2 hours. So you can go in and see a Broadway show. You can go drive down to Philly. Friends of mine went recently to a concert in Philly. So you can do that, and it's certainly easy to do. But I think there are quite a few cultural outlets here as well, so that you don't necessarily have to do that if you don't want to.
So I'm thinking of Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. Is there an E Street in Asbury?
I don't, to my knowledge, there's not. I don't know where the E Street came from. There could be, and I don't know about it, but I don't know if that's just something he came up with. But I know that he used to hang out in Asbury a lot. He actually, I think, was from Freehold,
Freehold, yes.
Which is maybe 30 minutes to the west.
Maybe there's an E Street there.
That could be where he grew up there.
Right.
But Clarence Clemens was definitely from Asbury, and I think some of the other members of his band were from this area, or played gigs like at the Stone Pony and Wonder Bar and other places here.
And then there was Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes, another good band.
Yeah. Asbury has had a really strong live music scene for many, many years, and I don't think that ever completely went away, even after like the riots that happened in the 70s and when this was kind of a ghost town.
Yeah. Whenever I think of Asbury Park, I think of Springsteen, I think of Southside Johnny, I think of amusement park, the Ferris wheel, and all that stuff.
The Carousel House that was next to the casino, they redid, and for a while that was a theater in the summers. They did musicals there, and it was a good theater company. Something happened and they kind of went out of business, which is a shame because they were really good, and we saw several shows there. And now it was after the theater, it was a skate park, then a farmer's market. But that Carousel House is still there. The rest of the casino they were planning to redo, and it hasn't happened. It's a shame because that was a cool old building. They used to have a skating rink inside. There used to be a arena where bands would perform.
Nice.
And it would be nice if they built that back. It was actually part of the development plan that the developer spend money and do that. There is a boardwalk revitalization grant that Governor Murphy signed into law, and they were talking about that just 2 months ago, I think. And the convention hall is going to get some of that money because it needs. Right now, the convention hall and the Paramount Theater, which was a beautiful old theater, are closed because they need updates to their sprinkler system. The Paramount Theater is where they used to try out movies even before they would go in to Manhattan to Radio City. I mean, I can remember when I was a kid and we went to New York, we saw first run movies in Radio City. You'd see a movie and then you'd see the Rockettes after the movie.
Right.
Paramount was similar, and they would try out movies here too.
Cool. All right. How about food? So food is a significant aspect of community life. How would you characterize the restaurant scene in Asbury Park?
I think food is a very important part of Asbury. I think that has also helped with the revitalization. And we have all types of food, from really amazing dive bar burgers to restaurants that have been opened by well-known chefs. We have a barbecue place that's really good that a buddy of mine runs that's going to be featured on Guy Fieri's Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives soon. It's called Mutiny Barbecue.
Awesome.
We are also getting a new sushi bar, an omakase sushi bar. I don't know if you noticed the article in the Times a week ago, I believe, where they were talking about bromakase because the omakase bars are becoming the steakhouses of this, I guess, this period of time, and famous people like Keanu Reeves are hanging out in omakase bars rather than in like Ruth's Chris. So we're getting an omakase sushi bar in a few weeks, which is it's going to be very interesting. And at first I didn't know that much about it, but it sounds amazing. There will only be 12 people in the restaurant at any one time.
Wow.
And it's expensive, but it's like kind of a whole interesting experience and event. And you are never served just a straight piece of fish. It may have like caviar, like if you got a piece of tuna, it will have caviar on it. There will not be a kitchen, but the chef can torch beef at the table, and the owner I was speaking to, it was saying that he might torch the beef and then put foie gras on it. So I'm interested to see that. That'll be something very new. Until recently, the omakase bars existed in New York. It's my understanding, according to this article in the Times, and LA. There are a few now, I guess, in Austin, Texas, and then we're going to have one in Asbury. So
wow,
that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, exclusive place. Can you get any type of international cuisine in Asbury, you think?
We have quite a few really good Mexican restaurants. There's a really good sushi restaurant that probably our favorite restaurant, called Taka downtown. There is good Italian. I think the one thing that we have a few Chinese places, but we haven't found a really good Chinese place. That's even, I think, becoming a kind of a challenge in Manhattan. Our neighborhood, where our place is on the Upper East Side, the place that was our favorite closed, and there aren't as many, just like there aren't that many delis in New York anymore. There aren't that many Chinese restaurants. It used to be that every block had one.
When I grew up in Brooklyn, especially, delis on every corner, kosher delis, and Chinese too. Chinese takeouts were big.
No, now it's a nail shop and a Starbucks.
Right.
On every corner.
Right.
So we do have, I think, what other restaurants we have. Black Swan is a newer pub style place that I think it's that James Avery, the chef, opened. And what else do we have? I mean, there are quite a number of good restaurants. If you like cooking at home, that we have a nice local seafood market that has locally caught seafood, and we go there quite often and make fish at home. There also is a great place downtown called Food Lube, where you can buy different oils, flavored oils and vinegars and condiments, which is nice. We're getting a new cheese shop, and there are great farmers markets. Excuse me. Couple of really good farmers markets in town. So if you cook at home, I think Asbury is a great place for that. And so it doesn't just have to be going out to restaurants.
Right. But you have good restaurants there.
Very good.
Definitely go out.
The Boardwalk has several good restaurants as well. They're like Robinson's Ale House I mentioned, which used to be the Howard Johnson's, is good. There's a new one next to that called Iron Whale. There are quite a few restaurants, and I think everyone in town has their favorites. And Asbury is a very bar-centric town. A lot of the restaurants have really large bar areas, and people go and sit at the bar to eat rather than sitting at tables. You'll go in and the bar will be packed, but there won't be a table with anybody sitting there. It's an interesting kind of culture, and it's been that way for a while. And some of the restaurants, when they've moved around town, when they built a larger space, made the bar area larger because that's where people want to sit.
Okay. So navigating a town is essential. Can you share your experience? Is there any public transportation? If not, when you drive, is there a lot of traffic? Is Asbury walkable in some areas? Can you describe that?
It's a very walkable city. As I said, the area of town is only about a square mile, so you're never more than a mile from the boardwalk and the ocean. We're almost as far as you can be from the boardwalk, and it's still easy to walk there. The town was designed in a very smart way. The avenues sort of fan out and are wider at the ocean sides. There's always a breeze, but it's not nice also to walk. And I walk more than I drive, so that's very easy to do.
Good.
There really isn't a public transportation system. There are buses that go to some other areas of New Jersey. The closest thing that we have to public transportation lately is e-scooters and e-bikes. And there was a company that went out of business at the end of last year, and they I think an offshoot of that business has reopened. So there are scooters and bikes on various corners around town, and you can pick up a scooter and then travel to where you want to go and drop off your scooter and pay with an app. And a lot of people do that, especially in the summer. And that's become a really popular way to get around. So there's that. But I think a lot of people
Just walk.
do walk around, and it's a very walkable city. It's why we first got a place here, is because we didn't have a car until the pandemic. We would just walk everywhere we went. There are also there's one cab company that we tend to use, but there are a couple of others, and you can call a cab and they'll be there in less than 5 minutes, and they're cheaper than like the app taxis that people tend to use now so much. So that's good. And we used to do that. And the taxi company that we use, which is Surf, got to know us, and you would call them, tell them where you are, where you want to go, and we can have a car there usually in less than 5 minutes. And, and it, $5 for one person, and each additional person is like $1 to go almost anywhere in town. So that's definitely beneficial.
Yeah, that's great. Of course, originally a New Yorker, and New Yorkers like to walk. So walking in a town is what I prefer.
Me too.
So how about safety? Safety is so important when you move to any place. Can you tell us a little bit about the crime? What's it like in Asbury Park? Is it more than any other city of its size, or is the crime pretty decent?
I've always felt safe in Asbury. It is a small town with a diverse urban population, which is one of the reasons we wanted to live here. But in my mind, there doesn't seem to be a lot of violent crime. That can happen now anywhere. I know that when I first moved to Manhattan, there were areas that you wanted to avoid, and now it doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like it's all evened out, and there is no good and there's no bad, and things tend to happen anywhere.
Right.
Asbury, I think, I've always felt safe in. I think that the police force does a good job of patrolling the city and has a presence around the city. It was interesting. We just had our Pride Parade. The New Jersey Pride Parade is actually in Asbury. It's the oldest and the largest in the state, and it's large for here, but it's small compared to New York and some other places, Toronto, where I've been. But I like it. It's more manageable. But during the Pride Parade, there were cops around town that were displaying like rainbow flags and in their vests, and it was really cool. And I think that they protect everyone here and do a good job of it. And so that I don't think that's a concern. I've walked home late at night, and I have friends who, I don't tend to stay out that late anymore, but I have friends that do. And I think that a friend of mine recently was saying that he actually went home from the bar on one of those scooters, and I think he was more a danger to himself than anybody else would have been to him.
Probably right. Probably right. Yeah, it sounds like a pretty decent, safe neighborhood to live. So that's excellent. I remember now it's bringing back memories. When I was a kid, friends of mine rented a house in Belmar, New Jersey.
Yeah, just south of here. Mm-hmm.
And we were there for, I think, the Labor Day weekend. But back in those days, forget it. I don't even want to mention what used to happen with those people. They had a canoe in the backyard full of beer. So you can imagine.
Yeah, there was a time, and we still run into people who knew Asbury in the time during the 70s when there were riots and and buildings were burned, and people still view it that way. I've talked to people who avoided it growing up, and it's not like that, and hasn't really been like that for some time. So I think that there are some of the older people around still think that Asbury is unsafe, and I don't think that that's true at all.
Yeah, because you live there, so you know. All right. So healthcare, access to healthcare is really important. Do you have hospitals nearby?
Yes, so the Jersey Shore University Medical Center is in Neptune, which kind of wraps around Asbury. It's that hospital is probably a 5-minute drive from our house, and it's a really good hospital. I've actually had a couple of procedures there. I find them to be excellent. They really take care of you. It almost feels like they're there just for you. The way that they run things, and I had a surgical procedure, and to go in for all the pre-op work was amazing. They took me. I had a whole list of appointments, and they took me to each place, and they're really great. I had a friend who had to have specialized radiation treatment recently, unfortunately, and Jersey Shore Hospital just got a type of focused radiation device that there are only 4 of in the country. So
Wow.
it's a great hospital. It's a teaching hospital. I also had a friend of mine, actually one of my colleagues and friends from when I was working at Rockefeller's husband, did his residency at Jersey Shore. So it's a great hospital. There's also Monmouth Medical in Long Branch, which is about 20 minutes north of Asbury. So both of those hospitals are great. And about, I would say, between 20 and 30 minutes north, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center has a branch from Manhattan there. That's where our friend Carol was having treatments there. So there's really good medical care all around us here, it's really, and most insurances are accepted. So I think that you're definitely set up for that.
In good hands. So
Definitely.
you don't have to necessarily hop on a train and go into Manhattan.
No. I mean I think that the care certainly that I've experienced and my friends of mine have experienced here is really top notch and as good, or in some cases maybe better, like maybe slightly more personalized than you would get if you were in a larger metropolitan area.
I forgot to ask when we were on transportation, is the nearest airport, is it Newark?
Newark is the nearest airport. Some people do drive down to Philadelphia, but when I travel, I walk to the train station, get on New Jersey Transit, and it's a one price ticket for New Jersey Transit, and then you transfer with the same ticket either on your app or a physical ticket to the air train that gets you around Newark Airport. So that's what I do, and that fare is a little over $20, which is better than a cab in many places.
Yeah.
And then you also don't have to deal with
have to drive.
You don't have to drive. You don't have to pay for parking.
Right.
And that works out really well. It takes a little longer, but it's certainly, I think, more affordable, and it's not bad to do that. I've done that several times. And,
how long is the train ride?
So you have to change like at least once, and there are a couple places where you can do that. So it takes a little longer. It's probably about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, depending on when you go. And then the air train is about 15, 20 minutes, depending on which terminal. The
Yeah, 'cause
one drawback now is Newark built a new terminal, and the air train does not go all the way yet to that terminal. So you get out of the air train and have to take a bus, which was something that we found out last fall, because it's a beautiful new terminal there. And eventually the air train will go there. It just doesn't now. But the buses run quite often, so it wasn't that bad. So that's very easy. But like I said, some people choose to drive down to Philly. I think some of the people who've lived in this area longer prefer doing that than going to Newark, because a lot of people who grew up in New Jersey drive everywhere like people in LA do. They're used to driving.
Yeah, everywhere. Yeah.
Because I lived in Manhattan so long, I would rather
I'm
walk
like
and
you.
take the public transportation.
Yep, I'm like you. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for answering that. Every place has its challenges. What aspects do you believe Asbury Park lacks in compared to other places that you have lived?
I think parking can be a challenge, especially in the summers when population spikes a little, and definitely when there are the concerts in town. Last year for See Here Now, there were people parking all the way back to where our house is, which is almost a mile from the venue. And I think that that's something that City Council is trying to help with or alleviate as new buildings are built. They're trying to ensure that there is enough parking for the units that are being built. I don't know if that's always successful as it would behoove them to be, but I think that's a challenge. I think, and that, just like other revitalization projects, sometimes the revitalization of Asbury is a little ahead of the infrastructure that would support the new buildings, and I think that that's always a challenge anywhere. So that, I think, will be a challenge for the near future. I think we could have a few other, like, I think we could have another grocery store. There used to be another grocery store at one time, and then over time that there wasn't enough need for it, and now I think there probably would be. It would be nice to have one. Things like that, things that fell by the wayside as the population declined, and also I think as things change. I mean, we used to have a dry cleaners on Main Street, and we don't now, but I think a lot of people aren't having clothes dry cleaned since people are working from home more. So there are certain things like that. Some of the mom and pop type places, there are still plenty of those type of shops in Asbury, and more being, like I said, there's a new cheese shop going in that will be small. So there is still that feeling, that small town feel here. But I think sometimes the rebuilding and revitalization has gotten a little ahead of where it should be, and that is a challenge.
So those are challenges. How about, are there any cons? Are there any things that would prevent somebody from moving there? Are there any cons?
Well, as I said, I think that the expense, property taxes particularly, there are people leaving New Jersey to move to other places where the property taxes are lower, or where they might not have income tax and that sort of thing. I know people have moved from here to the Carolinas or Delaware. So I think that does happen. I think that New Jersey is trying to help with that. There now are rebates on property taxes if it's your primary residence and you are above a certain age. You do get a rebate on your property taxes, which helps.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. I'm trying to think of anything. Well, I mean, the same, like, it's, I think, a double-edged sword. Because Asbury is small, you do see the same people all the time, which can be good or bad. So I think that, just like anywhere else,
Mm-hmm.
it's the both sides of the coin exist here as they do other places. I mean, I certainly think that's well, I certainly know that that's why we chose to get a place here and have continued to live here, because we like that the small town
Feel.
atmosphere, but with an urban, more diverse population than in other places in New Jersey or other places even in the country. I mean, I have a friend here that when they were looking for a place, they had lived in Manhattan and her son had grown up in the schools there, and they wanted to live in Asbury because it was more like the people that he grew up with in Manhattan than other places around here that are more homogenous.
Right. I like that urban atmosphere.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially coming from New York. So finally, what would you offer our audience if they're contemplating relocating to Asbury Park?
I think it would be good if you were thinking about it. There are websites you can check out. The Asbury Chamber of Commerce is just asburyparkchamber.com. The developer has a site called asburyparknow.com, which has descriptions of some of the restaurants and some of the music venues and that sort of thing. There's also a new publication or magazine that just came out, and they have a website where there are articles about restaurants and local artists. It's called citylifestyle.com. And so they have a site for Asbury that's citylifestyle.com/Asbury Park. And you can certainly find out more about Asbury at those websites. I would also suggest coming for a visit. Asbury is definitely open year round. There are more people here in the summer, but I think if you came in the spring or fall, you'd get more of a flavor of what it's like to live here full time. And it's certainly a great time to be here. And I think another challenge or con is we don't have a lot of hotels. During the 20th century, during the turn of the last century, from the 19th to the 20th, up until, I guess, probably the 60s or 70s, Asbury had tons of hotels, and there were more people who came here and stayed in hotels than lived here. And that's changed. So we could do with a couple of more hotels. The Empress that I mentioned is here, and that still is a gay hotel that people, well, actually, some people, if they're performing at the Stone Pony, stay there too. But I think we could do with a couple more hotels. But anyway, come visit. This is something that I used to do when I was in Key West, whether you really want to live there or not, I think it's a good idea to, if you're even thinking about it, go and visit and get with a local realtor like me, or there are many in town, and look at some places that are for sale or places that are for rent. I think you get a very good idea of what the town is like, and you can certainly learn more from somebody who has lived here and met other people coming to the area. And I think that that's a great way to find out about a place that you might want to move to. Those would be my ideas. I don't know that if they're all that novel. Mark, you seem to be nodding with me. I think that Asbury actually has a really good city website. If you just Google City of Asbury Park, you can find out about the parking permits that city has for residents. You can find out about how they do their trash pickup and those types of things, and learn about what it's like to live here before you would move, and see if it's someplace that you would like to be.
Could our audience find you somewhere on social media? Or
I'm on Facebook, Winborn. You can also find me on Instagram. I think I'm Brent APNYC on Instagram, and I think on Twitter as well. The agency that I work for, the real estate agency, is Sackman, SACKMAN Realty, and you can go and look at the list of agents, and I'm listed there. I think I'm actually near the top because it's alphabetized by our first names. That you can definitely get in touch with me that way, and definitely reach out if you're thinking of coming here. I'm happy to answer questions for people. It's one of the things I like about my new career is meeting new people and helping them find a place that they want to live in. And if it's Asbury, that's great. I'm happy to definitely help with that.
That's great. I don't want to put you on the spot. Did you want to sing something for us?
I was actually trying to find my little cheat sheet. I probably can do it without it, but I thought it would be, since Fats Waller wrote Suckle Rose here in Asbury, I'll do my own little version of that. Every retiree is filled with jealousy, 'cause they want to live in Asbury. It's perfection, goodness knows, where Fats wrote Honeysuckle Rose.
Is there more?
No, that's all I did. But excuse me, Fats, for butchering your song. But
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Sure, Brent. Thank you. This is great. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast. We appreciate it. It was very educational. I love Asbury Park. So
I do too, and I think that your listeners will as well if they visit.
They will agree, yes, and they will come visit too. So thank you, and we'll talk soon.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Where Do Gays Retire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast and consider making a donation by clicking the coffee cup on any page at www.wheredogaysretire.com. Each cup of coffee that you buy costs $5 and goes towards helping us continue the podcast. Thank you for your continued support.